Okay, hopefully we've got started. I'll keep the chat open if there's any questions. Um, or I guess there's only a couple people, so we may as well just jump in if you've got questions. Keep it pretty casual. Um, yeah, so I'm Jess. I am a land management advisor in the South Canterbury area, and there's a bit of a desire to do erosion control work down there. So I thought I'd coordinate with Sam, who works in the soil conservation team, and is also a land management advisor, because they do some pretty cool work up there. And Sam managed to coordinate with James, who is here as well, who was a farmer in North Canterbury, and we're very lucky to have him join us today, to answer any questions you might have that relate to what it's like as a farmer, having to work with poplars and maybe change potential aspects of your business. Yeah, so I thought first I could introduce, who wants to introduce themselves first? Should I get James? Are you there?
Yep, no, can do, Jess. So just really quickly, and I'll talk a bit later about how the programs work for us. I'll just sort of fill in any gaps that Sam leaves, but this is where we are. So this gives you an idea of the type of country we're on. We're at Waipara. We've got 3 generations on the farm. So Maria and I are farming with our kids and my parents, and we've been here for about 8 years. 770 hectares, about half of it's cultivatable and the other half's sort of steep or steeper hill country, and then some areas like what you can see on the left of that top left photo. So I'll talk a bit about that later, because we've used the SCAR program in 3 different ways. The poplar poles are just one part of that, and I realise they're probably the main one for tonight, but we've had a couple of other things that it's benefited at home. Yeah, quarter of an hour from Waipara, North Canterbury. We get a little bit of extra coastal rainfall, so we are lucky on that front. Not always, not last year, but in general, if we're dry, other areas are worse off. And it's a breeding property really. We do some finishing, but pretty traditional. And we've got several stud sheep flocks as well, and a tourism business is a bit of a sideline that we're trying to get going, and we're about 6 months in and going well. So yeah, that's probably enough from me for now.
Really cool. And it just looks absolutely stunning. I wasn't even that top left photo. I didn't even realize that was the ocean, and I was just like, wait, that's the coastline right there.
It's a pretty scenic farm. Yeah, good on a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. All right, Sam, I'll let you introduce yourself and I'll stop sharing my screen so you can jump in.
No worries. Okay. Hey, thanks, James. Good to see you online, mate. It's been a while. Yeah, well, I'm Sam. I work in the Soilcon team in North Canterbury, and I work with a team of experts or specialists. Andrew Turnbull, Yana Stolirova is our project coordinator, Pete Bradshaw and Kaikoura, and Anna Veltman and the WIMAC. So the SCAR team's grown a little bit since it kicked off in 2019. But I'm a land manager, just like Jess, and we're just lucky to have a program like this that gets us out on farms and looking for opportunities. So in the soil conservation space, so it's great. We've known the Hobans for a long time, great farming family, and flashback, James used to be in a very similar role at Environment Canterbury, so that's really cool. We've got sort of gone full circle there. Right, so do you want me to rip right into the PowerPoint? Should I, Jess?
Yeah, jump on in. I see Alex has just joined the chat, which is pretty cool. But yeah, we're just starting, so haven't missed too much, so that's all good. Yeah, jump on in.
Go. But stop me anytime if I'm sort of I can talk for days. So I'll fire this up now. And
yeah, I was just going to say to everyone, feel free to jump in with your questions because there's only a few of us, so it makes it pretty easy to do that. Or if you prefer to type your question, you can put it in the chat, or depending on what your computer looks like, there should be like a raise hand button, and you can do that too, and that could be your way you sort of alert us that there's a question you want to ask. Yeah.
What I'm going to do, hopefully, this will activate. If I could move that, that'd be even better. Cool.
I was going to say, can confirm it's working at my end.
Great. There we go. So I'll just do a little bit of a quick introduction to the program. And so we were lucky enough to receive funding and kick off the program in 2019 for a 4-year contract with really good, significant funding from both Te Urarako, the NZ Forestry Service that comes under Ministry of Primary Industries, Environment Canterbury funds, and farmer contributions. So it's a third, and it's a really neat ratio. So also we work really, really closely, and I'll do some sort of I'll just cover off some of our partners at the end of the presentation, who without them we wouldn't be here doing what we do, in particular the Hurunui District Landcare Group. So and there are others. So here's a shot, just the cover shot, the Soil Conservation Program, or Soil Conservation and Revegetation, the acronym for that, SCAR. We're known as SCAR. And here's a photo taken when we were with, that's Ian Knowles there, who's now the chair of the Hurunui District Landcare Group, when he collared us to come out and be part of filming his farm for Country Calendar. So that was really neat. All right, so just a quick overview of why we're here, why we're doing it. We've identified the most erosion-prone land in the Hurunui district, Hurunui and Kaikoura. That's where we're designated, where the funding's going. We have since, as I said before, we've just branched out a little bit into the Waimak, but the geology is a little bit different there in terms of the hill country. So there's we have a smaller influence there in terms of where the funding goes. Private properties, we're controlling sediment, we're using bioengineering tools, poplar and willow, sterile clones. We work closely with our partners at the Poplar and Willow Research Trust, Farm Forestry Association, and others, just to make sure that what we're using is, we know that it's an effective tool for managing hill country erosion, but just ensuring that we're not getting any spread and these plants aren't going where we don't want them to be. So securing the hill, protecting that natural capital. Soil's expensive, so we try to keep that, it's twofold, both in terms of natural capital for the production for farms as businesses, but also it's not as, we're also well known in New Zealand for being great exports of sediment. So unfortunately the latter is not as desirable. So securing the land, rebuilding the soil conservation knowledge within Environment Canterbury. It has been in hiatus, I think, and we're sort of bringing it back a little bit and trying to do service to those early predecessors of the Soil Conservation Board or catchment boards. Educating, working with landowners, sustainable land uses. It just sort of all folds in. But most importantly is building the relationships and the rapport out there in the rural community. That's up the Leader Road, that photo there. So these, I just touched on it a little bit before. We do get questions, we get asked quite a lot, and fair enough too, why we use these particular varieties or these exotics for managing hill country erosion. And some of the earlier varieties were, they played a role, but some of the early varieties just had issues in terms of poor form, or they got gut rot, or they suckered, or they played a role. But we can do better now with genetics. So stabilizing the land quickly, they're cost effective, relatively fast growing, but like anything, they can die. We do have quite high mortality rates, which we're also trying to improve with our farmers. Sediment control, continuing to stock. with these 3-metre poles buried or dug or augered at about 600 mil, and then a 1.7-metre Dynex sleeve and about 300 out the top of the sleeve to support top growth and stimulate it heading up and forming well to begin with. So the benefits, and that's only some. There are quite a lot in the rural landscape, and more recently, certainly looking into opportunities around carbon sequestration and the emissions trading scheme. So fodder, stock love them too, in drought conditions if need be. Pruning them up and feeding stock is another way to get through. In combination with poplar and willow, poplar have big, extensive root systems for interlocking at 10 to 12 metre spacing, but complemented with willows. Willows are really, really effective. If you've ever seen them down the river, they've got really fine root structure, and they are very effective on the hill, complementing for trapping fine sediment. And yeah, supportive function to biodiversity. And nursery crop for later for natives. Just a link, it's on our website for a little bit more information. Again, it's exclusive in the north at the moment, but who knows what might happen in the future. I don't know, did you want me to stop there, Jess, and bring James back in, or should I just keep going?
Yeah, I thought that could be a cool moment. I thought I'd also just add for those of you listening in that the program is in North Canterbury at the moment, but funding comes up in about a year's time. And it would be really cool if you want to apply for funding, if we had some sort of ideas in the pipeline so it would enable us to really get started. Because we want to be able to support you guys as much as possible. Yeah. So yeah, James, would you like to come back in and
Yep, no, happy to, Jess. So that's probably a good point then, just to mention, I said we've had support from the SCAR program in 3 ways. And bearing in mind, depending how far you get, whether you get it up and running down south, people may or may not have these 3 types of support available. But I'll tell you what we've had and how it's been good. And then, you guys can see how you go, both inside ECAN and outside ECAN, lobbying to get a really good program in place down there. But we have definitely been lucky in Hiranui to have what we've had. So the first bit of help we had through SCAR was land use capability mapping exercise carried out. Andrew Turnbull did that. That's something that the land management advisors have got the expertise to do. It's Sam mentioned, upskilling ECAN to bring back some of the old expertise that the catchment board had. And I'd say that expertise sits fairly squarely in that category. It's really good information. It's basically for anyone who's done a farm environment plan and tried to build land management units, breaking the farm up into your best and worst land and why, and thinking about what it's capable of naturally. It's a really Rolls-Royce version of doing that. So LUC maps, if you wanted to pay someone to do one, would cost you a fortune. We were lucky that at the time we did it, or Andrew did it a few years ago. That was a free service for us around this area. It wasn't oversubscribed at the time, and that's the wariness of letting ECAN people this side of the gate, and the fears about what that information could be used for down the track. So that's why not everyone jumped at it, but we've only got positive things to say from that experience. I can't see that ever being used against us. And we were at the stage where we were reasonably new on this farm. I'd only been here for a couple of years. There are quite a lot of development, quite a lot of development plans, but it did help us set the priorities for where we'd start. And one of those was working out where we were going to be best to target with poles. So yeah, it's telling you information you may already know quite a lot of, but there were definitely surprises in that. So that was good. The second bit of help we've had, so that top left photo shows it quite well. That bushy gully there, which it sits well and truly, and it's on that bottom left map as well, and the bottom right actually. So you can 3 photos show that gully. It's about 60 hectares. Part of the SCAR funding that was available, if it was in an erodible area, was that ECAN could help I didn't check the number before I came on, but they funded more than half the fencing costs of that gully. I don't think it was 3/4. Sam can correct me, but it meant that we could fence that off, which made a lot of sense from a management point of view anyway. It didn't make a lot of sense from a return on investment point of view. So there are other, in a farm that's relatively run down, there are lots of things we want to do, and some of them have a really clear return. Fencing that gully off, which is no good for us for carbon because it was all there pre-1990, and the regenerating stuff's not really forest species anyway. There's no productive value. All we've really done is save a bit of mustering time, but it's a special part of the farm where we do spend a bit of time. We wanted to protect it eventually. We knew that, it looked good from the outside, but when you walk through it, there was very little understory. And I think we're 4 or 5 years after fencing now. The difference when you walk through the bush at what's growing underneath is dramatic. So it's something we wanted to do, but it's not something we could have done at that point in our farming journey, I suppose. So we were really lucky the funding was there. And from a pragmatic point of view, when we talked about it as a family, because there were other things we could have spent our share on, I don't think that level of support's going to be there for farmers forever. Like fencing a gully like that right now is a nice to do. I could be wrong, but long term, I think it'll be a must do. And it made sense to get into it when there was support available, because if we waited for a decade or half a generation or longer, we might have found we had to do it and there was no support available. I think the waterways fencing that people have been through probably testament to that as well. There was a lot of support for voluntary work that eventually became compulsory work, and that was when the support was gone. So then the third thing we've had help with is poles. Sam's obviously going to talk about poles, so I'm just wondering how much you want me to say about it, Jess, but hopefully I don't cover anything Sam is going to, but if you've been going for 6 years, Sam, this is good. So this is, it gives you a rough idea of the sort of country we're planting poles on. So that big photo there, our first priority with poles, the first year they were available, we put 200 all around that track, and it was a complete disaster. We lost probably 3/4 of them. It was the first time we used a contractor to plant them. We've only done that one other time, and they actually had a really good success rate the next time. We were pretty down in the mouth about that, and we've never planted 200 again. We've stuck with 100. We've been planting them ourselves, apart from 1 year when one of us was crop ever since, and just thought then if it fails, we won't have any nagging things in our mind about were they planted wrong. But the reality was we put those there and we turned in, we had a good start and then a terrible autumn and they died. And I think Sam will confirm that a hell of a lot of the local poles died that year anyway. So it wasn't just us, but we were pretty despondent after that experience. So we thought we'll keep going. That's our main access track to sort of 80% of the farm. So, and it does move. So it's a high priority. We've put another probably 150 of those poles have gone back in now, or 150 new poles gone back in the same areas, and they've been great. We've been planting 100 annually. If there were more available, we would plant more. But having said that, 100's pretty manageable. If it's getting dry and we've had to water some, we can do that. If you could buy 500 and you did, and you had a testing season, then it's going to be hard to keep up with. But as it is, the pole thing's really well subscribed, so 100's been the maximum we're allowed to get anyway each year, and that's been a pretty manageable number. The year, can't remember what it cost for the failed poles, but one other year when we had a contractor help, Sam will probably update this if I'm wrong, but at the time, if we'd bought poplar poles and sleeves at full price, they would have cost us about $16 to $20, including the sleeve. We were getting them for $5 and the sleeve was free. And the year that we paid someone to plant them, it cost about $12 to plant. So well worth going to the effort of planting them yourself. But at the same time, if you did buy them at the subsidised rate and then pay 10 to 15 for someone to plant, you're probably still winning. It is quite a hard physical job, like very satisfying job, but it's hard physical work. The biggest breakthrough we've had is getting the kids to sort of run around the hill and drop the sleeves and the poles in place, and then I just have to follow along with the pole bar and actually plant them. If you're dragging them all around yourself, it is a bit soul destroying. And I tend now, we'll go and do 10 or 20 each day until they're gone, rather than trying to go and chuck them all in a day or get 50 in a day, which we have done and you can do, but you're pretty wrecked after it. We have planted ours close enough for carbon later if we decide to go down that track, but we haven't done it yet. A good shade and shelter, we don't see it as a loss of grazing land. Probably the only, and it's a minor inconvenience, it just needs some planning. Leaving cattle out of those blocks for a year or two afterwards is a bit of a nuisance, but if we put them all on one fenced block, for 3 years in a row, that's fine. Rather than spreading your 100 poles through 5 different blocks, you're better just to get them all where you want them in one go, and know that you've probably got cattle out of that for, I would like to say a year, but Sam might recommend longer, so we'll just say a couple of years. We are lucky with our rainfall apart from that dry year. So since that one bad year, we've had a really good success rate with the poles. I'm very happy with them. But I'm conscious that we probably get a bit more rainfall than others, so I don't want to make it sound easier than it is. We have put them in bored holes, we've thumped them into quite tight holes, we've put them in loose ones and rammed soil around them, and we've used the pole bar, which is what Sam will recommend. We tried other things before we went along with what Ecan recommended, and we can say that what they recommend is best, and we should have just started that way. It works well if you can get hold of one. I did make one for the first time round, and it was adequate. But the one that you can borrow from Ecan, if they do get that far down there, it just makes life easy, and there's a reason people use them. And I suppose the other thing we did slip up one year. We were quite late getting them in, and we got away with it. But it's very easy when they turn up, and there's a little bit of downtime in winter when they arrive. Normally, you've just got to get on with it and get them in the ground, because a few weeks later, and especially because we're lambing studs here, lambing turns into a bit of a marathon here. If the poles aren't planted by lambing, the pressure gets on pretty quick, and there's a massive bottleneck. So, and the quicker they get in the ground, the better they do, as long as they turn up in good nick, which they have. There was only 1 year early on, we had some that Sam and Andrew recommended we soak for a while before they went in, but generally, if you can get them in straight away, we've found things have gone really well. So just before I hand back to Sam, I suppose we've only got positive things to say about the SCAR program. All three of those things have been awesome for us, and we are grateful because we know that not every district's had the opportunity. It's easily the most positive interaction that we have with Ecan. It's not the only interaction we have with Ecan, and we've had the difficult ones as well, but we've never had any issue with Sam or Andrew or anyone, or Meredith, who was in the SCAR team when we did the gully project. So we've been really lucky to have it here, but we've been lucky to have the right people driving it too. And whether it's naive to let Ecan on the farm or not, I don't think it is. I think we've just got to work with people who are trying to help us, and that's where SCAR sits. So there will be, there are still people around who are resistant to any contact with a regulator, and I think that's short-sighted. I don't think I'll be proved wrong on that. I think there are people who genuinely want to work with us. So if you can make it happen in South Canterbury, I'd highly recommend it. I know if the staff want it to happen, they'll be pushing for it. But if it turned up and I was farming down there, I'd be one of the first person to sign up anyway. I cannot see the downside, and it's, apart from a bit of hard work each year, it's one of the best things we do on farm. So that's probably all I've got, Jess. If you want Sam to keep going, or happy to take any questions. But
yeah, thank you. There is a question in the chat from Jilly Hayward asking about Sam might be able to answer. Do you have a question of the bar you use to plant them? I'm imagining something like a Waratah rammer, but I have no idea what they look like, to be perfectly honest. I'll let you. I'll stop sharing so you can chuck something in.
No worries. Thanks, James. You nailed it. And thank you very much. Gee, beautiful farm. Been out there a number of times, but just seeing it from a couple of different angles there. What a treat. Goodness me. That was just, yeah. How am I going to get this back up and going again? Here we go. All right. So I'll just from hopefully that'll come through. It's quite hard to see. Thanks for that question. You quite hard to see, but that's me holding it there. The pole bar. It's basically a we've fabricated. Got a local engineer. We got the plans from the Wairapa. They're 30 years ahead of us up there in the soil conservation space, I must say. And we got the plans, got one of our local engineers to knock up 10 of these. So we lend these out every pole season, just for landowners to have the opportunity to plant them themselves, and we hold demonstrations or workshops like this just to help show technique and methodology of how to install the poles. So that's at a farm called Spy, just south of the Greta Valley. But that's it there. Sorry, and it's I can send you the plans if you like. It's just I guess it's a crowbar with handles at 600 to give you the depth. So you do all the work with the pole bar to make the hole and open the ground up to make that borehole up to the handles at 600, so that then when the pole is put in, you can lift this up and over with the man killer there or Waratah rammer that's welded on, and then you don't need to give it too much. You're just setting it in the hole because you've already made it down to depth. You set the pole and then you spin this around and use that top end there as a rammer. It's just got a flat edge on there on the top, and just ram up the soil around like you would ram up a fence post. Top tip, put the sleeve on first. Yeah, I found that out the hard way when I first started out. It's very hard to put the sleeve on afterwards. So that's a little bit about the pole bars. We've got 20 of them, lend them out, and that helps manage the workflow in North Canterbury as well, because we're pushing out about 5,000 to 6,000 3-metre poles per annum. Some of our great contractors in the district can do so much, but they can only be on one farm per day, more or less. And they probably couldn't get to everyone. So the pole bars out there in circulation helps with that. So I hope that that helped answer that question. Let's sing out if there's anything else.
There are a couple more questions in the chat. One from Tracy is asking, do you have any experience with using the, I'm assuming it's the poles and the protectors on deer farms?
Yeah, we do. But the cost goes up because we've done a couple of trials. Again, if a farmer holds us on a workshop, we were introduced to the Deer Association in North Canterbury, and that was really neat. And we started to go to a couple of workshops. We held a workshop on one of the farms, and to thank him for having us for a day, we provided him with some of these. They're called cactus guards. They're just I don't know. It's just mesh, probably 2-inch mesh. Yeah, I guess spot welded, and it's got sharp edges on the outside that you can just wrap around these trees. So put a couple of waratahs in once you've set the pole, a couple of waratahs, and then you wrap this it's a 1.7, I think, 1.6 cactus guard around that, so that the deer can't get in there, because deer and horses, I mean, cattle can give them a bit of jip, but horses are by far the worst, but deer will certainly give them a hard time. And those cages aren't cheap, to be honest. We work with a local supplier, but unfortunately we can't fund them at this stage. But I do know that the Marlborough District Council, who also have a Hill Country Erosion program, are funding them in their space, because I think they've got quite an industry up there that needs some support with managing sediment. So yeah, hopefully that helps answer that a little bit.
Sam, is there a Matagari trick that works, or is it sort of Wichita stuff?
We probably haven't got into it so much nowadays, but talking to some of the like Jamie McFadden of the Hurunui Natives, he's been pole planting for 36, 37 years. In the early days, before Dynex sleeves and before the what we know as the vineyard guards, they're just the crisscross black mesh socks, if you like. They used to uh, wrap matagari around in those sensitive areas where cattle or stock were likely to rub or irritate the poles. Um, with relative success. Talking to some of these older guys in the district, but yeah, it's I don't know. I think putting a pole in the right place and plus $45 for the pole and the free sleeve, and then maybe a $40 cage. The farmer that I've spoken to about it, he said he would do it again, but even though we gave him some, but he would spend that just in putting isolated trees in his deer unit, because he just wouldn't be probably able to sustain that at scale, to 100 pole order like James and Maria order each year. So yeah.
So other questions in the chat. How rough are cattle on the poles? And so the first 2 years, are the cattle
Yep.
in with them?
Yeah, well, we say we in this program we work alongside the farmers, so we like to work with them and have them make those calls in terms of they know their stock class, and we basically say, look, it's our advice for the first 18 months if they can reserve grazing in that area just to ensure greater pole survival. Some stock are okay. Like they know their stock really well, or they don't push them in or don't hold them in there for too long, and that's okay. But I think, James, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the younger stock in the cattle class that can give them a bit of jippo. They're just a bit more frisky, perhaps. That's sort of what I've heard around the traps. Yeah, I mean, but like James said, it's not always easy. I mean, it's part of that. That's like part of that planning ahead. But to take a whole block out of production for 18 months can be quite a commitment. So it's just, yeah, just finding the right balance there. In an ideal world, yeah, withholding stock for 18 months would be spot on, but it's not always affordable. Yep.
Oh, thank you. There was one other question for you, James, which was, what's your annual rainfall?
I probably made it sound like more than it is, but it's just I'm conscious everyone else in the district 600 mils, and we're meant to be 1,000. But having said that, we haven't hit 1,000 for a while. We might get it this year. And last year was terrible, but the polls they got through till the end of January pretty well, and then the year turned to custard until probably September, October. And they're fine. Last year's polls are good, so I think it just seems to be that head start. And just what Sam said before about the cattle thing, we've tried to keep cattle out from new polls for that year to 2 years, but we've also, if they're like, we've got some in a paddock that we use for bulls quite often because it's close to home and it's convenient. We've just put a single hot wire around those when we've had the bulls in that paddock, and that's been fine. And we haven't had any trouble with sheep.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Sam, I'll let you continue.
Alrighty. I think it's just a few pictures, just to help, prompt me mainly. So this is us, and this will be us next week. And there's Andrew, and I, making up farmer order bundles. As James said, we just have recurring orders since 2019 with a lot of farmers that are either 50 or 100. Occasionally we get a 25 recurring or a 75. We like to load in 25 amounts, mainly because the sleeves come in bundles of 25, and it just makes it easier to flat pack and make those orders up. And we make them up of different varieties. We know the favourites for our farmers in North Canterbury. It is typically the Veronese, because it performs really well in the dry, and everybody knows it. But we don't always have enough to go around. Plus, if we diversify the varieties, we can also sort of future-proof a little bit if we get a bit of a bug or a rust or something come in that starts to give the trees a bit of jip. We've got that diversity of spread across varieties to support us going forward. And what else do we do with that? Oh, and also I've had a number of farmers come up to me very quietly and just say, "Can we get a mixture, please?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, we will do that," because I like the different leaf color change. And it's amazing how many of those conversations we have. It's about purpose, but it's also aesthetic. Farmers really appreciate that. So yeah, and there's on the left, that's one of our high-ab operators, Josh, and we have the 5 meter high-ab truck there slinging. What we're doing there, we can load to weight with the high-ab truck, and we can take 1,000 at a time each load up into North Canterbury, just to stay underneath the weight limit. We do sometimes run a trailer if we want to really get a lot done in a day, but already delivering 1,000 poles to 12 to 15 farmers is a 12-hour day. And what we'll often do is, because we do pass on a small charge for each farmer order to farm, we will cut the truck driver off if we can take the rest on our trailer, so that he stops charging and he's sent home, and we'll take the last load. And we've worked out we can take about 300 on that trailer before the rims touch the thing. So that's that. That's on Ian Knowles's Glenmark Springs in Waipara, from the opening cover shot. That land there was affected by Cyclone Tracy, I think it was, in the 70s, I think it was. And the previous landowner, I think, might have taken a bit of a gamble in cultivating that block, which the cyclone soon took advantage of, and it's never been the same. So that was a leading edge for the farmer, for Ian to start pole planting out the back there and start securing that land up. Just another photo of sort of similar, or sort of the kinds of areas that we would target for pole planting. Already the land's dropped and has given way there, and chances are over time that will just exacerbate and keep on the slide like a bit of a glacier coming on down. Similar example there. This is sort of typically what we're coming across. I might just sort of, I know I'm conscious of time, but and I can talk for ages, but I'll just touch on our nurseries. We've with Andrew's leadership, Andrew Turnbull, he's done a little bit of this work. He came to us from Greater Wellington Regional Council, and they're very hot on soil conservation in the Wairarapa. So the idea here was to support satellite nurseries in the district, not knowing if continuation of funding would exist. However, this was a resilient opportunity to support those communities who had come so far, to ensure that they had access to ongoing material. Became so popular, in fact, that we're getting approached again. I think we're at 11. This is an old slide. I think we're actually at 13, and we've got 4 more coming, and we're probably looking then at capping that. Our nursery will only cut 4,500, and we need more. So in the future, these are nearly ready to harvest on farm. They take 3 years from cutting to harvest, from a cutting, install, planted to harvesting. We would, through the program, finance and purchase the material from the farmers, and put that into the grid, if you like, to get out and support other hill country erosion properties in North Canterbury. So that's pretty cool. It's a neat initiative, and there's a little bit of pocket money to be had. I mean, whips and wands and things for people wanting to do shelter belts. We've done a lot of work with kids. I can see them probably selling bundles of this on the side of the road in future, because it's quite difficult to get a hold of poplar and willow material from nurseries in Canterbury. So yeah, so we've just covered a little bit of that. We get into a rotation of installing so many stems per annum, so that way, in the first 3 years, the first lot will be ready to cut, and then consecutive after that. basically from Omahi through to Kickarang up towards the Marlborough boundary. And also we get a lot of comment. Actually, I've been pulled over on the main road. Farmers were so impressed to see, obviously with the sort of the downturn in wool, to see us using this sustainable product, which is Dagmat. Incredible, really great stuff, and we buy it by the kilometre and roll it out. And that's the Dagmat there. Terra Lana, I think, is the company. Out in Bromley. And that's Yana. That's our project coordinator. We're up there just south of. Oh, are we? No, we're at Kickarang, and it's quite a remote site. Neat farmers up there, and it was just going to be easier for us to hire one of these rotary hoes and just rip a few lines to expand on their installation. This was last season. So that was Yana having a crack on the machine, which was good. So we can either you just cultivate the whole lot and use a what do you call it, a pre-emergent spray, just to give you that longer lasting knockdown of grass and weeds. Literally just roll out the weed mat, pin it down, and then we install these 60 centimetre cuttings and just rubber mallet them in at 60 centimetre spacing. Different varieties. That's willow in the background. This is quite a large hill country property that will use a lot of this material going forward. And that's another one. Waitohi Peaks at the Herds property. Again, usually they've got these overheads, but we just drip lines, and we'll fund more or less 50% of install of materials, and we'll help install it with the farmers and the kids and get amongst it. That was another shot of the one up at Kickarang. There's Pete Bradshaw, land management advisor, up there, and Andrew, and trying to remember his name. It will come back to me. It's a bit embarrassing, and his farm worker. And there's the cuttings. That's at our nursery on the north bank of the Waimea River, where we're cutting on average 4,500 per annum. Those are called stalls. So once the material's cut, it'll hedgehog back, and then we will optimize or we'll prune the stump in the prevailing wind direction, so that we get just when it hedgehogs, we'll then cut and prune and just grow two off the stump. That'll give us in 3 years' time two more off each stump of the various varieties out there. There's a whole heap out there. We get together. There's Louise from MPI, who we worked really closely with, or Te Urako, and as part of the program, we get together periodically with what's called a Top of the South meeting, and there are representatives there from throughout both North and South Islands, from different regional councils who are running similar programs, where we can just talk amongst ourselves and share and do better and grow. And there's Steve Chua, our main man, River Engineers, Salt of the Earth at Environment Canterbury. Land use capability, James touched on that a little bit. I won't probably get too into the detail, but I will provide a document that, if you're interested, Jess can share on. Her and I both did training, land use capability training. We're probably not as advanced as Andrew Turnbull, but we've got a better understanding. And in short, it's about the land class and an inventory of resource for the farm. I've asked farmers, what did you get out of this report? And they said it's what we know about the farm, but in a formal document. So looking at classifying land, giving overall hectares based on 5 different I guess what would you call them? Attributes: soil type, rock type, erosion, vegetation, and slope. So, and then you can pull that through into this document and start to give priority. There's the document that I'll share, and and then you can start to map and shape opportunities for land use in terms of if you've got X amount of hectares that are 6E, E stands for erosion, 6E8, and you've got so many hectares, that land class and up would probably be where you would be looking at pole planting, and a reduction in how often you would be cultivating as you start moving up through those numbers. A lot of stuff that landowners will already know, but it can just help with farm planning, maybe even succession with family, or bringing a farm manager up to speed with needs for the farm. And that's the sort of what it spits out, and you put it into a bit of a key and have a look at overall. Farmers have also said to us that it gave them a better idea of actual what they have in terms of occupational footprint. I mean, it might be a 1,200 hectare property, but operationally it may only be 980. Things like that, which helps with planning, and just really informing people really quickly on what the farm's all about. This, James touched on this. You're about right, James. I think it was about 50, it was more 50-50 or thereabouts. And you were one of the early ones, one of the early runners. We learned early on. It was Andrew's influence here. We said we really probably just need to come up with a fair meterage rate, knowing that about 30 or thereabouts. It's a bit more expensive now in terms of per meter rate on fencing, but we wanted to meet somewhere in the middle. And for allocation of budget to reach as many people as we possibly could, putting a sort of a nominal quantum there helped us with our planning, so that we could plan and fund one project, but still keep tabs and still see the budget and go and get another one and another one, another one. So it's a really good planning tool for us. Yep. There's just a quick example similar to James's. This is up near the Conway, where at $15 a metre, just a little bit of fencing here tying in with existing, and to permanently exclude from stock, where it's pretty highly erodible in places up through there. There's the total hectares, the land class, and what Scar's contribution was. So you could say that Wenlock's contribution was that and more, probably, because ongoing maintenance and the like. But there's an example there, similar to James's again, where we would apply sort of the fencing grant. You take it out, keep the stock out of there, and then poles into production. Yeah, we come across some pretty neat stuff. It was one of Andrew's actually up the Inland Road, where there was this really neat, great farmers up there, and there was this they really wanted to show us this, or show Andrew, and they invited me up to have a look. There was this stand of kakatea, just sitting there getting hammered by fallow deer, and they really wanted to do something about that. So Scar was able to get in there. There's a big canyon over the back there. It's got very erodible, and that was another project. We're a bit bigger than that now. It's about, I think it's 1,000 or more hectares retired with our farmers. That many poles to date, LUCs, nurseries, and those are the things that we're really focused on delivering. I had to take that photo. I wanted to include this because it's all sort of part of the philosophy behind soil conservation, is looking at areas and asking the questions: what do you do? What would be the best approach or application on this part of the farm? Yeah, it was a really cool conversation that day with the landowner. But I won't get into it now. But it was really, really cool. It was really, really cool conversation there, and yeah. And these are the people that we work with. This is a bit of a snapshot, but the Hill Country Heroes here. This is part of the Poplar and Willow Trust. Yeah. Yep. That's it for me in terms of slides. If there's any you want to go back to, or let me know.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, one of the things that I thought would be really cool for everyone in South Canterbury to know about was one of the biggest limitations for you guys is supply because it's so in demand, because poplar poles and stuff are so in demand. So setting up those little nurseries can be a great way to increase what you need and then also help supply your community. And other than the initial like startup and harvesting time, is the maintenance required very much?
Um, there is a requirement for maintenance, so there'll be
Yeah.
Andrew's actually developed a happy to share it as well if your landowners or the southern crowd are interested or wanting to develop their thinking in the space around. So he's developed a nursery management guide with key measures and timing and milestones that are required to be met to be most successful in the space. So I probably won't try and remember that off the top of my head because Andrew's fantastic in that space amongst others. So, yeah, but there are some just key timings around pre-emergent sprays and if there's any rust or any rust treatment required, and obviously harvesting. But for the most part, they'll just do their thing. They're all asleep at the moment. The sap stops flowing. It draws down and goes down into their roots. That's why they're sleeping at this time of year. That's why we do the harvest. And while they're asleep, we can transport them and load them up with water and get them ready to go for the spring. Because as soon as spring turns up and those soil temperatures come right, they'll start coming back to life.
Hmm. Really interesting. Yeah, well, because I will send out that potential startup your own nursery doc. Tracy, I see you typing. If you want to speak up, feel free to unmute yourself. Question, is it ever too wet for them?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit like Goldilocks and the porridge in a way. It's just finding the most. Yeah, conditions can be too wet where they will rot before they fully develop. It's yeah, and it's a little bit. I mean, probably the best way I'd answer this. I'll just try and find a diagram here where what some of the challenges with treating hill country erosion is that. I mean, that's a pretty good example there, is that even when the scarring, like this looks to be quite damp through here too. But like scars, it's hard to treat the actual scar itself because it's lost its topsoil, which is what the plant's going to want to try to grab to get established and feed off that organic matter. Likewise, in really wet conditions, we would probably advise planting as close to or in the more stable situations. So, in order to treat this, we can't treat it direct. We have to treat it adjoining, so that we know that the pole will have better survival rate there than it would there, but it will get its roots down and it will address that, if that makes sense. So, wet conditions too. Yeah, can be challenging. We've had deaths through wetter conditions, that's for sure.
Another question from Jilly. Have you ever found wild pests affect them, like goats or deer, possums?
Yeah, we do have. There's one variety. I'll have to double check, and I've got some resource I'll share with you, Jess, for others. Different varieties and a bit of a guide on their benefits. Some genetics of these poles and materials were done some time ago for like a rust resistant, or there's a possum resistant one. I think it's a little
Oh,
bit more, just like there's a variety of willow called bitter willow. They just they don't particularly like it, but stags in particular will destroy them. In fact, they'll just use their tines and unzip the sleeves, and then they'll just rake the laterals. Uh,
so if you
Sheep,
had
no worries.
wild
Hmm.
goats, you'd probably want to put the protective covers on, like if you had deer.
Yeah.
and stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know. We've got a few poles up in Kaikoura, and there's plenty of goats up there, but
Sorry,
it's not
I
something.
meant stags and deer and
Oh,
wild. Yeah,
stags. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, definitely. No, even some of the bigger stags are in the places they're not as far out as you think they are, and they're sneaking around. It's certainly during the roar when they're chasing hinds. Yeah, so they are often in this low foothill front country. They'll come from a long way away just to come and annoy these poles. I've seen it plenty of times. Yeah, yeah. Goats, I don't know so much. I think less so, but you might get a pretty frisky billy giving them jip, perhaps. Yeah, but we don't get too many reports of willows. Sorry, of possum predation. Hares are the worst when it comes to nursery establishment, though. I will say
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, they'll just go through and put those 45-degree cuts marking their territory, and they're pretty annoying. Mm.
Yeah. Any other questions on poplar nurseries and willow? That's all right. Um, I thought we could jump to the land use capability slide, if that's all right.
Yeah, that one.
Um, yeah. Uh, so this is really interesting stuff, and this is what James was talking about. And so land use capability is it's the productive capability of the land, like forever. So you can do an activity. It's an idea that you can do an activity on the land, um, but it might have consequences. Whereas this is trying to figure out what could you do on this land in perpetuity, basically, and without potentially causing any erosion damage. And so it's really interesting when you look into it. But it was created decades ago, wasn't it? And so the classification system they've created, um, it sort of seems like it primarily is on erosion susceptibility of different types of land. And we will probably offer this, and it's a really cool thing to do. But for people who are worried about having the mapping done, I don't think it's something that can necessarily be regulated or anything because we're not like qualified mapping experts or anything, but it's just a tool, a really cool tool to prioritize different land classes on your farm because everyone knows that if you look at an area, you might go, oh, that's bloody steep. But in reality, it will have different facets to it in all these different areas. And yeah, I just find it really cool. Um, James, if you wanted to talk more to the land use capability stuff.
It's probably not heaps. Just yeah, it did. It's stuff you already know, but we've got a really nice strip along the coast, which we always think of as our best land. But once Andrew had mapped it, the best land on LUC is actually up a whole another level on a terrace and a bit of a basin, sort of up the middle of the farm, and it's a 100-acre block that's called the 100 acres. It's had a 7 hectare slice taken off it about 15 years ago, and the rest of it, see, someone else can do the maths, but the rest of it's just this one big block that hasn't been touched for years and years. And when Andrew's stripped it back to what's naturally there, that's the best part of the farm, or potentially the most productive part of the farm. But it's certainly never ever been run like that. So there was a surprise there that's pretty cool. And I'm embarrassed to say it's still pretty much run like that. But it's just given us a different handle on what we can actually probably do up there. Like it was the closest thing we had to vegetable growing land. Um, yeah, I don't think it won't be a problem with ECAM, but and without opening a can of worms, the debate around carbon forestry and stuff, because there's a lot of views on that. But every now and then you'll hear a politician start talking about land class, and if they do place some restrictions on where we can and cannot plant forestry, they're talking about sort of class 6 and up, aren't they? So 5, 6, 7, 8's all hill country, and 8 is like scree, but that's all uncultivatable stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4 is your best land, and 1's market garden stuff. So of course it's all covered in houses, and 4 is still cultivatable, but that's probably clay downs. So yeah, at some point we might have restrictions around where we can and can't plant trees, but I can't see that having an LUC map done through ECAN is going to give anyone information that they're going to use against you. Because if we get down that track with forestry, there is land use capability mapping done at a coarser scale for the whole region anyway. So it won't. You're not creating a rod for your own back, is what I'm trying to say. You're just getting some good information if it's available.
I might just add to that as well that, as you say, James, I mean, so in more recent times, so I'm absolutely confident that this cannot be used in a compliant sense, in terms of the organisation's use for this. We get trusted. There are actually only 3 providers that do this work in New Zealand, in terms of privately, and that's one's based in Nelson, one's in the North Island, and the other's now fresh to Canterbury. More recently, New Zealand has been flown LiDAR, so it's down to a metre. So it is actually, this is out there now in the public domain, and it's probably at a more granular level than perhaps even some of the LUC stuff will do, or even though we're out there digging holes and just matching geology and landscape to produce these documents. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's out there in the public domain anyway with LiDAR. So yeah. But this is just really adds value to the farm, in our view, and also just exchange of information with various consultants, or even just educating someone about the farm who hasn't been to all 4 corners, but you can start to show them by sharing the document that these are your best areas, and these are the areas you're trying to protect. So yeah.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks, James. Really good to get your perspective on things. I just see Julie is typing another question about the recording, so that I will send that out afterwards, so you'll be able to refer to it, and I'll send out the documents that Sam's referred to as well. Yeah, any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask in person.
Great. Thanks again for the introduction and invite to come along, Jess. And I think, like you said before, I think Inspire South Canterbury. That's what I was going to say. So we are working with a farmer down from the slides. I've got to quickly tell you this, because this will inspire people. Let me just whiz back through here. Okay, oops, daisies. Where is it? This nursery here, that one. If you can see that, the landowners here have sold up recently. They were really sad that they were going to walk away, but they've come onto a really good opportunity down in North Otago. So, because we set this up, and they really loved the process and really enjoyed getting behind and setting up a nursery because they could see the benefit. They've contacted Andrew now that they've settled in. They've moved all the stock. They're down there now, North Otago. They've contacted Andrew and said, "Well, Andrew, can you and Sam come down and help us set up one down here?" And we're working in with the Otago Regional Council with their Hill Country Erosion Fund. So looking to set up a nursery down there, which could be quite helpful for material either heading north. So that's pretty cool. There is a little bit of something starting up down there. But
it sounds really cool, and that's potentially closer if we wanted to organise a road trip, if anyone wanted to see one in action or even help out with setting it up.
Yeah, pretty cool. All right, that's it from me.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you, Sam, for joining and sharing your expertise in the soil conservation space. And thank you, James, again. Really stunning property you have, and cool to hear how you found the SCAR program useful and all your good tips and stuff. Yeah.
Cool. No, you're very welcome. Thank you. Yeah, hope it was useful.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I will send out the recording and some notes tomorrow, hopefully. If definitely by the end of the week. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I'm seeing a couple of things being typed. Everyone's saying thank you. So thank you, James,
Thank you,
and thank you,
Jess.
Sam.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Sam.
Anytime.
I will have your email in the invite list more than likely. Jillies, just in case you're worried about that. Yeah, awesome, cool. Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll catch you later.
Well done. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. See ya.
Thanks, James.